During my childhood, the family care I received was minimal. At the worst times, my father would unleash his anger and fists on me, but I quickly learned how to avoid the worst of these attacks. My mother's help was minimal as well. She spent more time smoking in the kitchen and complaining about my father coming home late. Our home was in a remote countryside, and for a 6-year-old like me, it was a long walk to the nearest neighbor's house, surrounded by lush trees. There was no one to seek help from. Fortunately, I was slim and could easily hide in small nooks, whether in a closet, a dryer, or even once cleverly under a Japanese mattress, where I could breathe fresh air without being discovered. Hiding became a skill I mastered, but for reasons that were not joyful. However, one night, I decided to try something different. That night, unlike the usual silence, the house was filled with the anticipation of an impending storm. Father came home, his usual stench of alcohol and anger filling the oppressive atmosphere of our house. His eyes, bloodshot from alcohol and anger, searched the dimly lit home like searchlights, eventually locking on me. At that moment, I knew without words, a storm was about to hit. Mother stood by, her eyes filled with both fear and helplessness. She seemed to have gotten used to such situations, mechanically smoking, her expression stiff and powerless as she watched the forthcoming burst of Father's fury. Though she occasionally tried to calm his anger, her feeble protests only fueled his rage. Father began to shout, his voice deafening, with footsteps growing closer and closer. I knew escape was the only way out. I had tried to resist before, only to be met with harsher beatings. His palms were like hammers. Each blow brought intense pain. I tried to protect my head, but he was like a raging storm, merciless. I learned that in front of my father's fury, silence and evasion were the most effective ways to protect myself. That night, as Father's steps approached and Mother's helpless silence surrounded me, I knew it was time to use my secret hiding spot. I moved as lightly as possible, fearing any sound might attract the eye of the storm. Amidst Father's roaring, I, like a light-fearing creature, quickly but cautiously moved through the narrow corridor to the back porch. My heart was racing so fast, it seemed as if it might explode at the next second. A few days earlier, I had noticed a small hole under the back porch lattice, not big enough for an adult but sufficient for a skinny 6-year-old. So, I wrapped myself in a blanket, took my favorite hippo doll, and quietly escaped out the window to the backyard. It was an autumn night, the outside temperature was extremely low, and it was still falling. I crawled into the ground beneath the porch, scraping my elbows and palms, but successfully concealing myself here. This spot was surprisingly spacious compared to my usual hiding places. I couldn't sit upright, but there was plenty of room to stretch my limbs. Of course, I was also covered in mud. It had rained a few days before, and the soil was still slightly damp. I wrapped myself in the blanket as much as possible, ready to spend the whole night here. But soon, even with my blanket and hippo for company, my teeth chattered from the cold, and I almost had difficulty breathing. Yet, I didn't want to go back home, knowing the unprecedented punishment that awaited me if discovered by my father. So I endured. "Sweetheart, are you very cold?" This voice was unlike my mother's, which had become hoarse from long-term smoking and screaming. This voice was sweet like honey. I turned to look, only to see a lady's vague figure beside me, lying down with a beautiful butterfly necklace, as muddy as I was. I nodded, surprised that I hadn't noticed her being there before. The lady crawled over and wrapped her arms around me, and I immediately felt warmth as if sitting beside a campfire. I snuggled closely into her embrace, not minding that we were both covered in mud. "Look how big you've gotten," the lady said tenderly as she examined my face. "Benjamin, how old are you now?" "6, I replied, confused. Do I really know her? It didn't seem like it. "6, she exclaimed in surprise. "You've already grown so much. That makes me happy." She let out a contented sigh, gently stroking my hair and giving me a level of comfort I had never felt before. "May I ask what your name is?" I asked, curious. She smiled warmly, her voice radiating pleasure as she replied, "I'm Anna. Little guy, what would make you happy?" After a brief moment of thought, I declared, "Playing puzzle games and drawing." "Is that so? I also have a particular fondness for word games," Anna said with a smile. "Crossword puzzles are my favorite, but I guess you might be a bit young for them, right?" I nodded. "Yes, they're too difficult for me, but I want to learn. Those letter blocks are fascinating. Will you play with them with me?" She inhaled and hesitated for a moment. Regretfully, I can't. Trapped here by your dad. I can't leave. But," she paused, reflecting, "Benjamin, would you do me a favor? For you, I would do anything," I promised, drawn in by her kindness. "When dawn comes, go to the police station and find an officer named Daniel Griffin. Tell him Anna is waiting under your back deck. He will come to rescue me," she instructed gently. "Then, perhaps we can enjoy a game of words." I was so excited that I hardly noticed the sadness in Anna's final words. "Yes, we'll be the best teammates," I assured with energy. Anna chuckled softly. "It's settled then. Good night, Benjamin." As morning light broke and I awoke, I heard Anna's guiding voice. "It's time now. He's gone to work. I'll take you to the police station." Opening my sleepy eyes, I crawled out from under the deck to fetch my shoes and jacket, involuntarily shivering in the morning cold. I assumed Anna was nearby, dressed and shielded against the chill. I began my journey. It seemed longer than the walk to the neighbors. My vague awareness of how far it was to the police station, and why no passersby stopped a troubled 6-year-old in dirty clothes walking alone, bothered me. No one questioned. But Anna's guidance was continuous. "Stop. Now cross the road. Turn right here. Keep going. You're almost there." When I stumbled into the police station, fatigue nearly overwhelmed me. Only when I approached the reception did the casually chatting officers stop their talk. "Hey, buddy, are you okay?" One bent down, looking at me with concern. He nodded. "I'm fine. Can I speak to Daniel Griffin?" I asked confidently. An officer picked me up. "Sure. Let's first warm you up. You're frozen." I remember silently reprimanding his language, no tolerance for blasphemy. Warmed by hot chocolate and a blanket, a kind man with peppered stubble sat beside me. "Hello, I'm Officer Griffin. What's your name?" he asked. "Benjamin." Setting the cup aside, I met his gaze firmly. "Anna's under the back deck. She needs to be freed for a crossword showdown." The officer's face turned as pale as a ghost. What followed was a blur. I found myself being escorted back home by uniformed people and flashing lights. Yellow tape wrapped the deck, a black bag was carried away, and my father was cuffed, a spectator. From that day on, I was enveloped by my grandparents, Officer Griffin and his loyal wife. Inquiries about Anna were met with "you're too young" as a rebuttal. But my life transformed, deeply, becoming brighter. Grandpa indulged me in simple joys, sweet soda at the cinema, bedroom walls as my canvas. Granny instilled values and the art of cooking. Life thrived under their nurturing. Friends multiplied. At 16, I returned with Grandpa to the place once called home, now just an empty lot. We shared a quiet communion on the tailgate of his truck, he with a beer, I with a soda. Then he shared, "Anna was your mom." The revelation stunned me. "My mom? Your birth mother," he clarified. "The woman living with your father wasn't her." He sighed, showing deep pain. "Anna disappeared when you were still an infant." My heart sank. Imprisoned by Dad under the deck? The idea was nearly inconceivable. Grandpa nodded solemnly. "I'll never understand why. Did she tell you she liked word games?" "Yes. Her warmth saved me from the chill of the night," I reflected. Grandpa revealed a heartbreaking truth. Anna had died long before that night, confirmed by my father's confession and Anna's unearthed remains. I stood there in shock, confronted with the absurdity of conversing with her, holding her jewelry, a unique butterfly necklace, now handed to me by Grandpa from an evidence bag. In Grandpa's embrace, tears filled my eyes, and once more, I felt her love, a force defying logic, proving his words to be true. Sometimes, love transcends all possibilities, and I, Benjamin, carried that warmth internally, a gift from Anna forever present under that sunset-stained deck.